Hi, everybody,
Hello, everyone.
and welcome back to another episode of the Pretty Guilty Podcast.
Yes, we are here back again.
Back again, better than ever.
Stronger than ever. We need coffee.
We do need coffee.
Some
We
coffee
did not have
today.
any time today.
Honestly, we thought about it and then we ran out of time, but here we are. So,
Yeah, pink and pretty guilty. So
yes, we love it.
we're ready to jump in today. So today we're going to talk about all things Cassie Ventura in the Diddy trial.
Yes.
She took the stand at least 4 days last week, ended on Friday.
Friday. Yeah. They wanted the defense actually wanted her longer. This judge really is trying to keep it dialed in, which I think I was sort of surprised about. I wasn't really sure how I think the trial was going to go because there's so many big names involved in this, and I wasn't certain really if there was going to be kind of a cover up in certain instances, but
Yeah, well, and with Cassie's testimony going longer, the judge was upset because the defense didn't say this until end of the day, Thursday.
Right.
You know, we're going to need more time with Cassie. And the judge said, we had multiple hearings talking about this for months. We have said that Cassie Ventura had to be done by this date, that this particular witness cannot be on the stand any longer. Do you guys think that that is feasible for your, examinations of the witness? And they agreed on it. And then they went and had Cassie read an egregious number of text messages that really didn't feel relevant to the charges. There was speculation online about the reason why they were reading this amount of text messages with Cassie, the defense, and it was because they're trying to say that they're trying to delay Cassie testifying because they want her to continue to testify. She's 8.5 months pregnant, and they felt like, and this is again speculation, that if she would go into labor while she's in testimony, it would be a mistrial. And that's really what the defense, that's again the speculation as to, because the text messages, it was very long. It was a lot of text messages that didn't feel relevant. And then all of a sudden, last minute, after months of preparation and agreeing that Cassie had to be done by a certain time, the defense said, oh, we're going to need more time with this witness because we're not done with our cross-examination. And the judge was not happy.
I guess they could want her to go into labor, but I feel like it was more of a tactic to wear her down. The expense and the cost of this, like her going into labor at the court, would be terrible, and then to put her through all of this again, because they would retry the case. So I don't know that a mistrial would have been the answer to it, but I definitely think they were trying to wear her down because she is pregnant, she's tired, but she came in with a mission. They were reporting in the courtroom that when she was leaving court or any time in there, she did not make eye contact with Diddy at all, and he would be looking at her. So she came in and she came out and she said, I'm here for a purpose, and she accomplished that, I think, for sure.
Imagine doing that testimony 8.5 months pregnant. This is not the first time that this story has been in the public. She had filed a lawsuit back in 2023 for $30 million against Diddy, alleging a lot of things. He shut it down within 24 hours. They came to a settlement agreement. Right. We did not know the number of the settlement until this trial, which was $20 million to settle that case privately. And so you imagine coming out about all of these things, which I'm sure she feels lots of shame for, which is silly.
I mean, for sure. That's why she testified that in 2023 that she tried to walk out in the street to essentially end her life because this was too much for her to bear at some points.
Yeah, you imagine now you have to talk about this with the world watching. I can't imagine what that felt like to have those very private text messages read out loud for people to hear. And thankfully, which I was really upset about this, but thankfully the jury was the only ones to view some of the freak off footage.
Right. They did like a screen, right? They protected everything by a shield.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the media had the gall and the gumption to say, well, can the people in the courtrooms watch it and, see it? Or that's what they had said. They had said, can we have 3 major media outlets only be the ones to watch the tapes as well and then just report on it? And I thought, why would the media need to see that? I understand that there's a certain point where the public is allowed certain, to know certain things,
right.
but there is no world where the media needed to watch these very, I'm sure to Cassie, very shameful, embarrassing tapes and then report on them to the world what was on them. Nobody needs to see that. But in this case, the jury did, and that's fine. The jury saw them, but the
they're
media,
supposed to. I mean, they're there to make a decision on this case, and so that is their duty as far as this goes. So it's like an obligation to show them. I think by shielding it actually was the right thing to do, because then when they're requesting these text messages to be shown public, it feels like when they're being adamant about it that it's some sort of voyeurism, especially when you're looking at a case of this nature. At the same time, you see high profile murder trials where there's text messages, where there's information that is even photos. There's some cases where they will show photos of somebody who has been murdered, and they'll actually show their injuries, the autopsy photos, etc. So I guess in comparison, they're thinking, well, why is it okay for some rather than others? But we have to remember with Cassie, we're dealing with somebody who has threatened to harm people and basically take them out.
Yeah, Cassie's not the one on trial here.
No,
Diddy is.
correct.
And them viewing those tapes is important, but do I think it's the make or break? No, in the sense of the media, the world didn't need to see those things. Yeah. Maybe if Cassie and Diddy were both on the I mean, I don't see a world where it's necessary. No, for the jury to see it is fine. I don't see a world where it's really necessary. And when I heard that the media even asked that question, I mean, it just shows you sometimes how out of touch these major outlets are. The fact that they felt entitled to watch those.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked at the amount of people who were disseminating information and giving updates on what was going on in the courtroom, because of course it's a federal case, so there can't be live cameras on the inside. But they were saying things such as, at what point are we going to start hearing about the crime? And while she was abused and there was domestic violence, when are we going to start hearing more about the criminal activity? But I think I was just shocked at how dismissive that they were about the things that happened to her. Mm-hmm. I understand that there's a component of there's 3 charges that he's charged with, and domestic violence is not one of them. So it's a sort of a separate type of a crime because these are federal charges, and so we have to take that into consideration. The jury has a lot to determine which charges apply to what, or how, or if they do, and that's what their task as a juror in this case. But just reporting on it, it seemed like there was such a lack of compassion in a certain aspect that I
feel
thought
in the beginning days there were.
Right.
The first day Cassie was on the stand, it felt like, can we just get to the plot here?
Right.
I feel as though when it comes to Cassie's testimony, the reason why it's so important too is because they're building a character of Diddy too.
Right.
Correct. Cassie is, one of the closest people to Diddy for many, many years. I mean, they started when, this is almost 20 years ago when they started their relationship.
She's the closest to him that's alive. I mean, Kim Porter is no longer here. So
there are a couple others, I'm sure, in the mix, but I say that in the way of, it's important because Cassie certainly knows what the skeletons are in that closet, and that's just Cassie testifying about what happened to her. That Cassie has seen things that she knows that was not talked about in this trial that he should be locked up for a long time. And that's not her journey, and that's fine. It's just Cassie knows where the skeletons are hidden, and so her testimony is so important because obviously we're talking about Diddy hiring people for these freak offs, and that's part of it.
He's paying them, right?
Paying them,
yes,
for prostitution, which is part of this crime that he is charged with. So the prostitution, I think with Cassie's testimony, she's really talking about her story and what happened to her. But I think if we peel back the layers of it, the prosecution is putting together a big picture. So that's Cassie's testimony. We're going to see next on the stand Dawn Richards. Well, there's no S in her name.
Right.
Dawn Richard on the stand next, which it will be very interesting.
She started her testimony on a Friday. I think
Yeah.
what they said she was on for approximately 10 minutes.
10
And in that 10
minutes.
minutes, she actually
Drop some bombs already.
said a lot. She
Yeah.
corroborated the abuse of Cassie that she witnessed. And from what I understand, they're expecting her testimony to be a pretty lengthy one as well.
Well, and also Dawn Richard, she also filed a lawsuit against Diddy as well.
2024? Or was
Yeah,
it?
2024.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So I think her testimony is going to be also a massive. One person, I know we're getting a little off topic here. We'll redirect. But another person that was speculated to testify is Aubrey O'Day. As we all know, she's been very outspoken for many years, but she came out and confirmed that she's not testifying in the trial this time around, which I think is very interesting. She said that she talked to Homeland Security and let them know that there were some things that she needed to let them know about and never heard back about testifying in this trial. So it'll be interesting to see if they reach out to her now after her saying that.
She did a podcast in New York City. So she arrived in New York City to do the podcast, and it was kind of close to the area where the courthouse is. So a lot of people, I think that's where the speculation came that she was going to be testifying.
She said, I made it very clear that I was headed to New York for fun. No, I really don't feel like she did. I feel like she really added to the
I feel like she purposely did that for certain. Yeah.
She said that she was on a plane. She posted it. She landed she got 600 calls from media outlets and she had to block the numbers. And I'm thinking to myself, someone who is so closely related to the Diddy situation on their way to New York when this trial is going on, it's a pretty safe presumption.
No, I definitely agree. I think it was something that she did because she wanted people to talk about it or to notice a little bit. But in a way, I feel like there's a certain aspect of her or any of the victims who are going to testify that there has to be some sort of vindication to be able to stand up to your abuser in court. I mean, even for Cassie, how strong she is to be able to not even look at him. And
I wouldn't look at him either.
No, I wouldn't look at him either and just be like, this is the day, the reckoning for you. You hope that he is found guilty, because already I feel that with Cassie's testimony, just even minimal, from Don's testimony, we had that Daniel Phillip, who he was essentially an escort sex worker that was hired, and he said he was paid $600 to $6,000. He was only paid if he performed. He witnessed the abuse, but outside of that, he was paid for these sex acts exploitations that are part of, the sex trafficking charge. It could be part of the RICO as well. And so I think we're seeing evidence to support a guilty verdict for sure.
The reality of it is, and I'm going to say allegedly with all of this, but between the abuse to Cassie, certainly what Dawn Richard is going to testify to, Aubrey O'Day, anybody else who I feel knew Diddy in any type of realm such as that one could all probably attest to some type of traffic. I mean, a trafficking situation would not be surprising with all of this going on. There are people who worked at the hotel rooms that they did these freak offs at that said there was baby oil on the doorknobs and the curtains. The rooms were thrashed, blood and just bodily fluids.
It was it's like a gruesome scene. They had a baby pool full of baby oil.
And I don't think that it's a far reach to say that. However, if there is no proof of that, this is all alleged, but it would not be surprising. And that's part of the prosecution's that's why Cassie's testimony was so important. That's why any witness to anything that has to do in this realm is important, because prostitution and trafficking is not a far reach to believe, with knowing what was going on behind closed doors. And, the amount of drug use that he's admitting to in these text messages and emails to Cassie and her experiences, him saying, we're lucky we made it out alive. The amount of people that he had working for him. We have people like, let's say, the Epsteins of the world that had people go out and draw people in.
That was their job. It was, they would go out and scout for people and bring them in. We have to remember here, part of the component of proving these charges and allegations is that there was money exchange, and for me, that's where kind of it sort of closes in, because these were sex act that somebody benefited from, and it whether I mean, Cassie was paid in a roundabout way because her homes were paid for by Diddy, her vehicles, which he would take away at a moment's notice, depending on, she had mentioned, during whatever mood he was in. If she made the wrong face, then that's all it took for him to, take it out on her and beat her and abuse her and kick her and drag her and punch her. Just vicious activities. And let's not forget that, you know, she didn't want any of this. And I know the defense is coming in trying to say, well, you stayed. You asked for this because you were asking for
said
these
you
freak
liked
offs,
the
that you
freak
like these freaks off. But there becomes a point when you're an abuser that you agree to it because you're trying to please the abuser, because there is a lot of fear and there is a lot of shame. And I feel like with the sex trafficking, that there's a component to it which starts with grooming, which he certainly did. I mean, she was 19 years old when she met him. He kissed her on her 21st birthday. So essentially, that's where the grooming began, when he met her, to get to that point, right?
Right.
And so I think when we're looking at,
Well, and showing up to her 21st birthday party with Britney Spears and all of these celebrities, any 21-year-old being wowed by a man turning 21, it's the best day ever. And he's certainly probably charming. It's just probably very exciting for someone who's young and vulnerable. And he knew that.
correct, yeah. I mean, he played off of that, but that's part of this practice that they use with these young girls, that, again, they groom them, because he slowly built up to that point, to where she trusted him. And then this was her first adult relationship, and at some point, when you're young like that, you start thinking, is this what relationships are like as an adult,
Well,
or
that's all
is
you really know.
yeah, you
when
don't
you're
know any
young.
different.
Well, and then you have, she's saying that the first time she ever took certain drugs, she was fed them in a water bottle or a Gatorade bottle. So again, not a surprising proponent of being drugged. These young girls, this happening to, and then you drug someone and then you record them doing these certain acts, and then there's this now proponent of blackmail, and then now you feel like you have to do what this person says, because nobody would ever believe that you were drugged when these things happened to you, or you're so mortified you would never want it to get out. And again, these are all just proponents of showing that he is capable of all of these things, by Cassie saying that we were in a consensual relationship and this is what he was doing to me, which was, imagine what would happen to someone who isn't so willing, or someone who wasn't so accepting. Because if there was a certain level of pleasure that he got from these acts and she was willing to do it, imagine how much worse it is, on, not that it's worse for Cassie or somebody else, but how much worse it would be for someone who's not consensual and not willing, but that happened to them too.
But I think we have to use that word consensual and willing very loosely, because one of the things in this relationship is, she did say that she loved him, and that she, at one point, that I think she was trying to please him. But it becomes this mental state and kind of a hold on it when you're in these relationships, which is a very domestic violence, because there was physical, mental abuse, right? And that component of her trying to please him, I do not intertwine that with willing or consensual. Do I think there's certain aspects maybe in the beginning where it was? We have to remember that in order for him to be found guilty on this charge, that really all we need is one time. I think with the RICO, the racketeering charge, it has to show kind of a pattern. But as far as the sex trafficking, and all of those components, I think all we need is one time, and I think we can prove that. And at this point, I mean, there's allegations, but now we're seeing evidence to support. So now it's no longer like these are alleged. We're seeing the evidence to support these allegations. And so, I mean, what do you think the jurors are thinking through this?
Well, from the feedback that I've heard about the jurors and their demeanor during this trial, some of them I feel it's hard for them to hear, but a lot harder for them to view. They said that when the jurors were watching the video of the freak offs, that was one gentleman just kept looking away. It must be very uncomfortable, I imagine, to be in that situation as a juror. However, I think that the jury is going to see through the defense's very flimsy defense. They don't have, I mean, even in their cross examination of Cassie, they're like, well, you were with a older man who was a music producer before. And she's like, yeah. But you are also at the same time reading these text messages that show that Cassie was in love with Diddy. So them trying to paint or portray Cassie as this gold digger who just wanted a man to give her a music career. My thought to that was, well, why didn't she leave earlier if that's all she was in it for?
But the problem is, when we look at that, she didn't even have a successful music career.
Right.
She tried to, but Diddy would not allow it. She recorded, what'd she say, 10 albums?
9,
I mean,
think it was.
at the end of the day, like, what did she get out of this? Because there's people who always say, oh, there's other individuals who sleep their way to the top. She certainly has not. I mean, she's very talented, and she has a beautiful voice, and she has a lot to offer for the gifts that God has given her. But she's not, like, what has she
Been able to do.
And where has her career gone while she was with him? And that,
Well,
when I
and
look
she
at that,
said that she pretty much had to give up her career because this was a full-time job for her doing these freak offs. But that's my whole point in saying that is if she was with Diddy so he could advance her career, she would have left a long time ago. I believe she was with Diddy for 2 reasons. You know, I do genuinely believe that she loved him, and I do believe that he was her abuser, and there's that Stockholm syndrome where you love your abuser. I don't think that she was in it for the gains. I think that she went through so much. Why would you put yourself through all of that if all you wanted out of it was a music career or you wanted to be famous or all of these things? And I feel like Diddy gave her access to excess. Don't get me wrong. However, I don't know that the years of abuse that she endured really were worth what she got out of it.
but then that excess was taken away from her in the blink of an eye when he was in a bad mood. And she talked about when he would abuse her, how his eyes would black out and became just a totally different person. What I didn't like is how the defense spoke about, well, he went to rehab, like he was trying to do better because he went to Sedona, Arizona for rehab, spoke about that. Like, I mean, if he's on drugs and he was coming off of drugs and he was doing withdrawals, and so essentially that's why he abused you. And I was like, I'm so sorry. There's not a world that should convince anybody that this is okay, regardless of what mood he's in, what withdrawal he was coming off of. And I understand the defense has a job too. They're trying to essentially create a defense off of a legal standard. It's not whether I want to believe you're right or wrong. We have to defend you in a legal manner. So I get that because he has the right to a defense. But it is a very poor defense in my eyes, and I don't think they're doing a great job. And
Well,
my
to
thought.
say essentially, well, you were only abused because he was, coming down from the drugs and coming off of it. Well, that would be an isolated incident. That wouldn't be years of abuse. And that's not really A, believable, B, a good excuse at all. And C, you're really just making a mockery out of what it is that Cassie and other victims have been through at the hands of Diddy. And I know, like you said, that's their job. They had to defend their client, but that's how they have no way out of this, that's their best thing is they're saying, well, he was getting clean, so he was angry, so he did these things. And I mean, the jury sees through it. The juries, these juries are not stupid. They see the evidence, and unfortunately, sometimes they're not so great jurors. But for the most part, I mean, you really try and fool a jury and really make a mockery of them. They're not going to love that. And I feel like that's what the defense is doing but between dragging out Cassie's testimony and just making a mockery of what Cassie has been through, the jury does not feel empathetic towards Diddy at all. I'll tell you that.
I don't feel like they are. I will say, on cross-examination, the reports from the courtroom were that the defense was very soft with her in the sense of they didn't come at her hard and aggressively.
Starting out, the defense did heat up more, the first day of testimony. But also, do you think that it would look good if Diddy's defense attorneys came balls to the wall at a woman who's 8.5 months pregnant as she talks about the abuse of the abuser of their client? I don't think that would be a very good impression on the jury. And then you have Diddy. I can't help but wonder what goes through his mind during these testimonies. Is he feeling betrayed by Cassie? Does he wish that as these memories
100% he does.
yeah, does he feel, during this testimony, does he feel like he is going back to his glory days with Cassie? That, does he like missing her through all of this? And it makes you feel icky when you think about him probably loving the messages and the things that they've done. He's reminiscing. And to me, that feels disgusting to think about.
I feel that there's a part of it that absolutely I don't know. There's a part of it that I feel like he takes joy in the sense of like
It's
hearing.
not even a part of it. I think he's loving it.
Yeah.
I genuinely, because his demeanor in the courtroom is, he's waving and smiling and, doing the little heart,
the little heart
to his family.
I'm surprised the judge actually is allowing Diddy to have as much interaction
with his family.
With the family, because generally in court, you're not allowed to do that. They try and refrain from that. But of course, he's thinking, I'm Diddy, I get special privileges.
That's the feedback from the reporters that are in the courtroom, is that, he's so used to being Diddy and he's so used to being so charming and everybody's there to see him.
Right.
And that's kind of his demeanor in the courtroom, is everybody's just here to see me. It's just in a different circumstance.
There's no part of me that's like, wow, he's really humbled because he's been locked up this time while he's waiting for trial. I don't believe there's any part of him that is humble. I believe he thinks he has a right to do these things and that these people were just lucky to be a part of his life, that Cassie was lucky to be in a relationship with him and to have sex with him. And I don't feel he has any remorse. There's been none shown at this point that I can see.
I will be very intrigued to find out if Carisha is going to testify. She's Diddy's most recent girlfriend, publicly, that we know about. And she kind of came out in support of Diddy after all of these charges came out. She was very much saying that she didn't know anything about that, which I don't
think he's changed and been like, wow, you're the one that I really am going to not do the same things to that I've done to prior people. But even it'll be interesting when Don Richard gets back on the stand on Monday to hear her testimony, because I think it's just going to piggyback off of Cassie's. Right now, a lot of people presume, because she's supposed to be the key witness, that essentially if this just only happened to her, then I think they're looking at it as, can we really find him guilty on these charges? But it's going to be other testimony. I mean, I think this trial is supposed to be, 6 weeks?
Yeah.
6 weeks, approximately, maybe 2 months.
It's going to be interesting to see how many of the alleged girlfriends, because there's Gina. She was someone that he never really claimed publicly, but there's Gina, Carisha, of course, Kim Porter. I would love to know what it is that Kim would have to say about all of this, and Cassie. But those are just the girlfriends, right? I want to know if they're going to have any victims of Diddy's that are just someone who came across Diddy on a night where they were, newly to Los Angeles, and his assistant or someone said, hey, Diddy loves young girls, because I did hear this story that, a girl said Diddy loves young girls, and they show up at a place, they get fed some things that they don't know that they're drinking or anything of that sort. I want to know if there's going to be any of those type of victims that are testifying, because I know they're out there. I know they're out there.
No, they're definitely out there. The other thing
Allegedly.
with the defense, as far as the drugs, and especially, I mean, Cassie really spoke a lot about the extensive use of drugs and not just one thing. I mean, there was cocaine, there was ketamine, there was,
MDMA, GHB.
And at one point they asked her if she's currently taking a drug to help her with her opioid addiction. And I just thought, why did that need to be in there? Because you know what, if that's what she needs to help her through, because she did 10, 11 years of drugs, and just under this influence and state of mind, she literally said she just had no feeling at some point. She disassociated.
She did it because it helped her disassociate and it helped her go numb. Because I can't even imagine what she went through. You would have to disassociate and you would have to feel numb, because feeling anything would never be the answer. I mean, I would want to feel as little as possible about anything, mentally, physically, just numb me up. And I feel like Cassie showed extreme bravery in her testimony. She had the lawsuit that she filed against Diddy in 2023. So what had happened with that? She said that she went to rehab and it wasn't for her addictions. It was to deal with her PTSD and trauma.
Yeah.
And so she had gone to rehab, and she decided she wanted to write Diddy a book expressing how she felt, how the abuse made her feel, what she's dealing with. She wrote the book, she gave it to Diddy, and Diddy did not care. And she felt like she really needed him to understand it. And so then that's when she went ahead with the lawsuit. And she said she just picked a random number, and 30 million was the number that she picked. I don't know that it was for monetary gain. I think she said she just needed something to get his attention. She just wanted him to feel what she felt, and she knew that clearly her feelings did not matter, so she was going to hit him where it hurt. And the things are money and his career, and she took a lot of money, and she took his career away from him essentially. And they said that, do you know that what you alleged Diddy of doing ended his career? And she said, I can understand that. I understand that I did that. But how powerful must that be to be abused by someone who's on the top of the world, who feels untouchable, and you single-handedly were able to take him down. Just little old you.
In 24 hours, he responded.
In 24 hours.
$20 million number.
Settlement.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing about that is when she testified, there was a moment where the defense had asked her about a second settlement that she's receiving from the Intercontinental Hotel, where that incident that was shown on television, I think CNN was the first ones to put it out.
Surveillance video of her running down the hallway, Diddy chasing her in a towel and being very aggressive.
Kicking her, dragging her by her hair, her body. So regarding that video, the Intercontinental Hotel has settled with her. So the defense had asked her, have you received a settlement from anybody? And she said no. The way it was reported out by the media was if she had lied on the stand, but she didn't. She has not received a settlement.
The settlement was allegedly 10 million, right?
She confirmed it was 10 million, but she hasn't received the settlement. And so they said, have you received any additional settlements? And she said no, which that was not a lie. That was not dishonest. She hasn't received a settlement. And then they said, she said, I settled with them for 10 million, but she hasn't actually received the money yet. So, but then the prosecution did redirect and said, would you give that money back? Essentially to never have had to do the freak offs,
if you never had to do a freak off, during those times, would you give the money back?
Yep. She said, I can't think of the statement off the top of my head, but she had said that of course she would, but it wasn't just to make that go away. It was to get her life back to where it was before all of this had happened.
The defense is sitting there saying, oh, well, we believe that you only, released this stuff so you could make money because you were going broke. Who cares why she released
Honestly,
it?
I was like,
even if she did, good for her.
Yeah, they're like, you and your husband moved in with your parents in Connecticut. Okay, so that's what parents are for. Don't they know that? Parents are here to help if you need a place to stay, if you want to come here, and maybe just, she had made it seem as if they had gone there for kind of some shelter, some safeness, like a safe barrier, because you feel like your parents are going to protect you. And, regarding what you were saying, as when we were talking about her being like disassociated, and that was the only way that she could do this, it was like this state of mind to function. That is not somebody who is indicative that she was a willing participant, that she woke up every day saying, well, I really just want to go do a freak off today. Even though I understand there were text messages that she sent to Diddy that had said, I can't wait to do a freak off, or I want to do one with you today. But again, those are ways that you please your abuser, because you feel shame, you feel unsafe, you feel like they're going to hurt you if any of this gets out. But walking around in a very numb state of mind is not somebody who does not demeanor somebody who would do this willingly. So there's no part of me that thinks that she did this for as long as she did because she thought it was great.
Well, and her fleeing to Connecticut to go stay with her family for some type of shelter, I mean, you would want the comfort of a parent.
Right. Some support.
And I'm sorry. I don't feel like Cassie, I mean, she's Cassie. She did build her own name, and certainly she could get some brand deals. She could get anything to pay the rent. Correct. I don't think that she was broke. And I'm just, again, going to reiterate, if she was broke and she felt like, I'm going to share my story to make money, that's her story to do with what she wants. Right. Well, I don't believe that that's why she did it. Even if she did, who cares? And no, I'm not going to weaponize that. That's her story to share. If it's her truth and it's really what happened, which I fully believe that it is, if she wanted to release it to make a quick buck, that is her prerogative. And nobody can make her feel bad for that.
And why are they making her feel bad about that? I mean, Diddy paid $20 million, but you know what that's called? That's called hush money.
That's called guilt.
Yes. So let's not say that it's not what it is, because
because if he said these are lies, she's going broke, and I want to fight to vindicate my name, but no part of that made Diddy look like he did not do what she was alleging he did.
Which after that video, the surveillance video from the Intercontinental Hotel came out, he issued an apology and said he was embarrassed by that, and he still is now.
He said they're not true. That did not happen. And then the video came out, and he said it's true. That did happen.
And then he said, I was embarrassed that I did it then. I'm embarrassed by it now. And then you know what? They removed that apology video. And now the defense is saying that that wasn't true, that video was altered. And I just like, pick a lane here, pick a defense and stick with it.
Well, it doesn't, again, that you don't have to be a genius juror to understand that the defense is grasping at straws because they know they have no case. Mm-hmm. They're trying to dismantle Cassie in any type of way and her testimony. Cassie and her husband, they both put out a statement after her testimony. I loved what he said because so many people are saying, nice. He saved her, and he said she saved herself. Yeah. And I've got to watch her come back from this, come back to life, heal herself, save herself. And it has been the most beautiful, rewarding thing that I've ever been through. And he sat there with her every single day during her testimony. He supported her. He looked mad. I can't imagine if it were my man would jump across the room if that was, right. The amount of willpower that I know he had to have to not jump up and strangle Diddy in that courtroom. Mm-hmm. It must have been emotionally and mentally so hard for both of them.
And then the defense didn't even want him in the courtroom. They tried to get him removed from the courtroom. I think there was a part,
ugly people.
There's a part that I believe is he going to testify, that there was a portion of it that they said that because of that he could be called to testify, that he wouldn't be allowed in the courtroom. And the judge was like, she needs support. I mean, she's, 8.5 months pregnant. She's about ready to have a baby. And
the fact that you have to think about this testimony for a normal person would already be horrific.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, honestly.
And then you add the public speculation and the platform that her dirtiest of dirty laundry is being out on. And then she has to answer these questions. She has to relive these moments. She has to watch this imagery and read these messages. 8.5 months pregnant.
With all the emotion, the hormones.
And I'm just so glad that it's at the end of her pregnancy. Whereas if this had made her go into labor, at least that baby was like fully cooked,
right,
and ready to go and healthy. But you just have to wonder how this is affecting her health and the baby's health. And the defense does not care. Definitely Diddy does not care, and it's horrific that she had to go through it. But that's what makes it even bigger and even more beautiful, that even pregnant how she was strong enough to sit up there and be so graceful and just genuinely be honest. It wasn't, from the what we hear about in the courtroom, it wasn't this hateful, bitter woman. She said, I still love him. I have love for him. I loved him back then. I don't hate him for anything that he did. I don't wish harm on him or wish ill of him. The fact that she could have been a very hateful, bitter woman on that stand, rightfully so, and she chose the high road of, I'm going to tell my story. I'm not going to lie about it. Even when I could say, oh, I hated all of it and he made me do it against my will, she said, no, I really loved him and I wanted to make him happy. And I felt like if I did this, he would love me more and we would be together forever and he would treat me better. But it's that cycle of abuse where you think that you do something for your abuser and they will love you more for it. And then they just end up keep hurting you. And TMZ count your days. TMZ count
just
your
honestly,
days.
I was so frustrated with them because I honestly
is an understatement.
I just can't watch them or support them or even acknowledge the stories that they're putting out on this. It really disgusts me. It disgusts me to my core.
Cassie's first day of testimony, TMZ puts out this article. It's unseen footage of Diddy and Cassie in 2017 and 2018, because I think it was 2017. Mm-hmm. They broke up in 2018 and TMZ puts out this footage of them happy on a vacation out at a beach, tropical location. And they're saying, look, they were so happy. And why would they do that when this woman is on the stand talking about the abuse and the things that this man has done to her, and TMZ to undermine her and try and minimize what she's been through by saying, well, look, they were happy in 2017. They were on this vacation and she was smiling and she was cheering him on.
But that was part of what she did. That was part of the performance that she provided with these freak offs and getting people in, is trying to pretend as if she wanted these things, if she was happy doing it and she was in this happy relationship. And that's the persona that she put on in the public, right? Because Diddy didn't want it getting out about the freak off. So you think she was going to go cry on a red carpet? Do you think she was going, because that vacation, I saw that video before I saw that it was on TMZ. It was from somewhere else. And when you look at it, they weren't the only ones there. It wasn't the two of them on vacation, just, just a little getaway. There was a whole team of people there. And if you look at her in that video where she's sitting down at the table and there's men standing up around her, like cheersing and stuff, and she literally, number one, sadly looks out of it. She does look like she's on something just completely out of it, like she's described. She's holding up a glass like, yay, like whatever. She doesn't want to be there. You can tell by her demeanor. And so you have to go further into it if they're going to put that out. And for them, number one, to say that. They also put out a video after the same day saying that the defense won that day, because they were saying, well, I don't really think that there was enough information to really support it. They said they need to close the loop on it, which I can understand to a certain aspect when we look at the charges, because you do have to separate certain aspects. If he's not charged with domestic violence, but he's charged with sex trafficking, the RICO charges and all of that, then you have to take a look at it and really hunker down on it, because it could be two different items that we're addressing, right? So I can get that. But for them to go out there and be like, yeah, basically the defense won today, and oh, here's a video of them looking happy, just stop. Like, TMZ, go away. Because, the other thing she didn't do, on a side note, super quick, is she didn't she named names within their inner circle, people of escorts that were hired. She mentioned Suge Knight when he had gone after Suge Knight that one night. Other than that, she could have probably dropped so many names and so much celebrity dish that she did not do.
Yeah, a classy woman. Mind you, I think that if she started going off on tangents, then the courts would have been subjected. It's not really relevant to Diddy in that sense.
No, it has to apply, but I'm sure there were people at these freak offs that she did not name drop, is what I was meaning by that. Agree. Yeah, that she could have dropped some names to bolster her story, her credibility.
Well, sure. Like I said, I believe Cassie certainly knows what skeletons are inside Diddy's closet,
right,
and what are hiding behind every corner. And I think that we're going to see a lot more testimony from a lot more really imperative people. Cassie's name is just the biggest, and obviously her story is so important. Right. I do believe there are other witnesses and people whose testimony will be very important as well. I don't see Diddy walking away from this.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see so much more testimony. It'll be interesting, but I think it's going to be good because Cassie was the big witness to start with, and everything else just is going to, I think, support what she says. So I just want to always make certain when we talk about these things that it's so important. I hope Cassie's message can reach anybody who is in these type of relationships. Men too. Men are also victims as well, that we can't forget about, because sometimes we always think of the women, but men are also victims. And just know that if anybody's in a situation, that there's somebody who will support you. There is help. You can get out. It's hard. It's so hard and it's so difficult. Yeah. And there's just a team of people that can help.
I think that's why I think that's why Cassie did it.
For sure.
But B, I think that's why Cassie's testimony is so important, because it shows you that, that life that you see people have, that you idolize, that you wish for, is not so glamorous. But it shows you that even people in these glamorous situations deal with the same thing that people who are very regular also deal with. And it's hard for them to leave, and that's relatable. And it's hard for you to get out of situations, and especially with someone who has power, right? Someone who has that power over you, power in the world. Yes. If she couldn't leave someone, in that situation, and you can't leave a situation that you're in. Hopefully that Cassie's story will empower you and show you that there are new beginnings. I mean, she left Diddy in 2018. She married her husband in 2019. They had their first baby. She was pregnant when they got married. She's had 2 kids. She's pregnant with her third one.
Yeah.
She found sobriety. She found love. She found a family and happiness and hopefully peace in the future.
And safety.
Yeah. And there is always a second chance. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it feels like you're never going to get there, but that's why it's so important to stand up for yourself and be strong. And it's not always easy, but hopefully Cassie can help a lot of people with her testimony.
And that was the thing. She, just like you said, and she was able to get out against a huge mogul,
Massive,
so powerful in the music industry. And that's another thing that you touched on as well that I really liked. And that was that we have to hopefully send the message and remember that while people want to be famous and they want to follow this dream, and I think everybody should be able to follow the dreams of what they want to do, but there's such a dark, sinister world that is involved in that lifestyle, and you give up a lot in order to achieve success. And I think a lot of these women coming out and the testimonies that we're going to see, Dawn, you look at Aubrey O'Day, the things that they've sacrificed to try and become famous or try to have a career, and even big A-listers that don't talk about it, the things that they have sacrificed is something to really notate to here. So she has so many messages to send with this one testimony, and she did a really brave, great job. Yes,
very brave.
We're all proud of her.
I know. I'm like doing amazing.
I know. I'll just give her hugs.
Oh,
I
truly.
wish her well with her babies. So I hope Diddy goes down. Just hope he goes down. It's just disgusting what he has done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we will keep you guys posted on further testimony in this trial. I really am very intrigued as to see what other witnesses come out. I know that Diddy is a very powerful person, even behind bars. He's very powerful.
For sure.
So I just hope that every witness that comes out feels strong enough to do their testimony just like Cassie did.
To be safe.
And to not be scared and to be able to speak their truth. So we will keep you guys updated on more Diddy stuff. We really wanted to make a whole episode talking about Cassie, but not going into details about all the nasty stuff, to talk about Cassie and her testimony and talk about how we hope Diddy goes down. So
I mean, he should not get away with this, but there'll definitely will be more to come. So we'll continue to follow this trial through the end, and we'll bring updates. We will be doing probably a weekly podcast of what happened during the week, discussing, the most important points of what needs to be addressed. And the jurors have a lot in this one for sure.
I would not want to be a juror on this. I can't imagine being a juror and having to watch this poor woman testify to all this abuse and seeing the videos of these horrendous things happening. So we'll see, what we get next week on the stand, where there's really very tight-lipped about who's going to be up next. So Dawn Richard up next on the stand. I am very, very excited to hear her testimony because I think that's been a long time coming.
I think so too, for sure.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe the video, leave us a comment down below of any of your thoughts on the case. And, if you felt like it was hard to listen to all of Cassie's testimony, and we will see you guys in the very next video.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Bye.